Yo guys, what is up? Welcome back to some more Zero Hour, and also welcome back to my How to Play a GLA Part 2 of this series. We're all going to go all the way from beginner level all the way up to pro level throughout this series. So in the first one we covered quite a few basic things. We covered about how workers are nice and cheap, how you want to always be building a barracks first for GLA throughout this series. I'm just going to stick with building the barracks first. It's a nice, safe and rounded build order. We talked about supply positioning and how many workers you generally want to be having. We also talked about where your arms dealer could be positioned, where the tunnels could be positioned. We also talked about how many workers you want to build from the beginning. So, like I said, 5 workers that you want to be building. We talked about what your first attack would be, a tech RPG, maybe a worker in there as well, and what you'd follow that up with, whether it be some technicals or scorps or whether it be quads. And then we also talked about always creeping forward with your tunnels. So what I suggest before, I'm a big fan of always getting, whatever you're learning in life, whether you're learning the guitar or the piano or a computer game or you're learning chess or whatever you're learning, let's say you're learning how to build a house or anything, always get the basics and fundamentals right before you try and do too much. Like they always say, try and learn to walk before you can run. Always learn and get the basics right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to show you how, I'm going to jump into a random map, so Final Crusade in this case, and we're going to show you how the 5 worker standard build order can work on any map, and to always get this fundamental right, basically. So we're going to do 5 workers from the beginning. We're always going to start with the barracks first. And then we're going to go over here to get a supply and a tunnel over there as well. So I was sending 2 workers over there. We're going to make 2 terrorists, tunnel in the base, and we're going to build a tunnel over here as well. So what I did there was press K 3 times for workers. Going to press N here for a tunnel, go on the side. I've got my terrorists on control group 3 and control group 4. Of course, use whatever you prefer. I don't quite have enough for a tunnel yet, but now I do. I've got a tunnel in the front. Terrorists can be running around, killing trucks and stuff like that. But then you'll see this 5 worker build order has got me a tunnel on the left, in the middle. It's got me a second supply and a tunnel cover in there, and that's again just a standard opening. Remember, you always want to get that technical upgrade unless you're going to be going for Marauders, which I don't really recommend. Maybe about I don't know, 3% or 4% of your games you want to be going Marauders, maybe not even that. Some players don't even make them at all. You always want to be generally getting the technical out as your first unit. Always ensure you've got something else queued up behind it. Going to go inside the technical, and that's going to be our first attack. And it's just basically to show you that 5 worker build order can work on any map. Of course, this worker here could have carried on and could have built a tunnel here, been a little bit more aggressive. Could have even gone here. This worker here could have gone here and been a little bit more aggressive. We could have maybe skipped that tunnel, and maybe we could have invested in some more terrorists to do a terror tech rather than force fire in the ground. So yeah, basically the 5 worker build order, 2 supplies, and 3 or 4 tunnels, and that wants to be your standard go-to build order until you get much better at the game. It's always, no matter what map you go on, whether it be Final Crusade or Tournament Desert or Lagoon or pretty much any map, there's some weird ones, like for example this one, Desert Fury, where the second supply is very, very far away, and then maybe you want to be doing something different. Although you can still do the same, you can still go for 2 supplies. But the majority of maps, like people complain, oh, I've never seen this map before, I'm not going to play it. But the majority of maps you can do the same build order on. So for example, this map here, there's a supply in your main base, supplies there. So you're going to do your 2 supplies there, and then you have 2 other tunnels elsewhere on the map. It can work basically on any map, and I suggest mastering that 5 worker build order before you move on to anything else. The second thing that I want to talk about is always having your workers doing something. You never want to be having some idle workers. So we're going to show you again how the 5 worker build order can work on a map here. We're going to again do a barracks as the first unit. We're going to again build a supply. I'm just a peasant. Can I have some shoes? The order of the worker going towards your second supply. And whether that first worker goes somewhere else, like over here, to be aggressive, it doesn't really matter if you want to. If you want to go and build an aggressive tunnel first, because your worker will get over here faster and be able to build that tunnel, whereas this supply being a little bit delayed might not affect you all too much. So yeah, the next thing I want to talk about is always having your workers doing something. So you see right now, I can't click that. That's the idle worker button. I can't. You should never really be able to click that. All your workers should always really be doing something. You always want to be grabbing some garrisons on maps as well, but not too many. You don't want to be like purposely going out of your way to go and get like this one here, unless you're going to go for an all capture build. This one here. On this map, there are a few important garrisons. So you got like this one, this one, and this one. But it's also important to keep some RPGs inside of your tunnel. For example, with my first attack, it's going to be Tech RPG. If they're all inside of different garrisons, if they're all like inside of here, here, and here, they're locked away and won't be able to carry out any aggression for me. So yeah, you want to be going inside some of the garrisons, but you don't want to be getting inside of every garrison very early. If it goes late game, then sure, get every garrison on the map, but very early, you don't want to be getting inside of every garrison. So what I'm talking about here, the next point is you don't want to have really any idle workers at any point. You want to be as efficient as possible. So this worker here is currently useless. Okay, you couldn't say it's completely useless, because if this tunnel does get attacked, there's a worker there ready to repair it straight away. But generally, the workers on the sides, and the worker like here, and this worker here, you want to be kind of always creeping forward. I've still got an idle worker here. That one wants to be collecting. There's no use at just standing there doing nothing, unless I was going to put it inside the technical and go and attack. You'll notice I actually missed the veterancy because I was talking. You never really want to do that. As soon as I play a game, and I notice a player is making technicals and they don't have that veterancy stripe, I instantly know the level of a player they are. They're generally going to be extremely of a poor level, and you're going to be able to win the game very easy. Or if they're a pro, they might have misclicked and they've clicked something else. You always want to be getting that, because a technical can be the difference between you winning and losing the game. And if you get that upgrade, your technical causes a little bit more damage and has a little bit more HP or armor, and it could win a battle or it could lose a battle, and that could decide the game for you at such an early point. That one unit means everything, because it might be the first unit, or it will definitely be the first unit you have on the map, and that difference can be the difference between causing a load of damage or causing no damage. Again, I'm going to repeat it like I said in the first tutorial. You always want to practice a few games and always ensure when you're pulling workers from here that you're replacing them, and you always want to have a minimum of 5 workers on all your supplies throughout every game that you play. If ever you notice you're collecting with only 1 or 2 workers, then I would quit and surrender and just play that game again, and just always challenge yourself to always have 5 workers. Even it's a hard thing to do, because even some of the pros, you sometimes see them with only 2 workers on the supply. But as I said in the beginning, I'm a big fan of getting the basics right before you move on. So having 5 workers is very, very standard and basic. And the next thing I want to talk about is your general strategy as GLA. So if you're against a GLA opponent and you are GLA yourself, you can take head-on engagements. For example, like quad versus quad, or scorpion quad versus scorpion quad, or techs. RPGs, you can fight against each other in head-on engagements, no problem, because you're the same army. But if you're against pretty much any of the Chinas, maybe apart from China Vanilla, or USA, you generally do not want to be taking on head-on engagements, because things like these, for example, are going to beat you all day in a head-on engagement. Quads, technicals, everything is pretty much going to lose to these. So you generally want to be using kind of hit-and-run tactics, exactly like the game was designed. So, for example, you want to be, let's say there's a big blob of these over here where this bunker is. You want to be going around. You want to be getting the occasional garrison, but you want to be like going around them. You want to be, okay, you've just picked off a dozer, then you want to be going back inside. This is all with micro, remember, it's important to have a a great mouse that you're comfortable with. You want to be coming over here. You want to be causing a bit of damage to some trucks or to some Chinooks like that. And then when the big blob of V's are going to come, you're going to quickly then get out of there. It's all about hit and run tactics. You generally never really want to be taking on head-on engagements unless you're at a massive advantage. You've got a load of technicals and the enemy has only a few V's and you can just surround him and swarm him. But the general strategy what you're going to be using is hit and run tactics. So for example, again, unload here. Let's pretend these are terrorists. You're going to be hitting power plants. You're going to be doing damage to dozers and buildings and then running and getting out of there. And then at the same time, you want to be climbing forward, not climbing forward, but you want to be gaining more and more ground with these workers whilst you're distracting it. And that's not an easy thing to do. You're going to be multitasking. So you're going to be running around, causing some damage, but then at the same time, go back here. Okay, that one's now complete. I'm now going to go and build another one over here and just always, you're like, in StarCraft 2, I don't know if I said it in the previous video, in StarCraft 2, when you've got all that, the creep, I think they call it, it spreads over the map like a spider in its web. It's spinning creep all over the map. That's what you want to be. You want to be like a spider, like branching out its legs and consistently just pushing forward and forward and forward. That is your strategy, and never taking your foot off the gas in terms of aggression. GLA is one of the harder armies to learn because I believe you have to work harder and have more actions per minute than the other armies. So for example, USA can kind of just sit back, chill, make a few fly bases. As soon as he's got like 5 Vs and an ambulance, he's just going to be pushing straight down the center of the map and just probably killing you. Whereas GLA has constantly got to be working. It's like you cannot afford to just sit around and sleep for a little bit. You have to always be on the move and on the aggression, especially early on. Later on, you can make buggies and quads against, like for USA, and then you can afford to sit back. But it's in the early game, early to mid game, you want to be as aggressive as possible. Okay, so next thing I want to talk about is oils. So for example, let's say I've been in with my technical now. I've caused a load of damage. I've killed one Chinook. I've picked off 2 Vs and a dozer. Maybe I've killed a power plant with a terror tech or something like that. But when you're at an advantage like that, that's when you want to be also getting your oils. That's when you can afford to sit back a little bit and maybe bring in a little bit of an income. So I'm going to press 2 for my barracks. So I've pressed Control and 2 and set my barracks to number 2. And I've queued up 2 rebels. I've queued up 2 rebels by pressing B and B, so B twice. Only cost 150, so I don't even really notice this come off my money, especially now I've got 27k, but of course I'm just giving you a quick tutorial at this point. Don't need any saboteurs. So yeah, I've quickly cleared up 2 rebels. So even if I don't have enough for the capture upgrade right now, I can get the capture upgrade at a later time, because it's going to take these rebels a hell of a long time to walk over there anyway, especially this one. So let's say I've waited a few seconds and now finally I've got enough for the capture upgrade. I'm going to click on my barracks again. I'm going to press C for the capture upgrade, just a little bit quicker than pressing down here. And whilst that is happening, I'm going to continue my aggression and continue distracting the enemy. So for example, now he's getting his V's up again. He's built another dozer. He's rebuilt his Chinook. So I'm going to go back in and I'm just going to continue to distract him. Even if this one dies, I'm going to have another army back at home. I should have anyway. I've been talking too much. So this technical dies. I'm instantly going to go with the next one and keeping the enemy player on their toes and keeping them busy. I'm thinking mainly against USA and China at this point, but it can also work against GLA as well. The same can be applied throughout the whole of Zero. Actually, once you've caused a bit of damage, that can then allow you to go and get your oils behind. So at that point I'm going to get my oils. So it's a good Zero Hour player will know when to get their oils. If you get it straight from the beginning and invest all your money into oil capture before you've caused any damage as GLA, then you're probably going to be facing some problems. Generally you want to get it a little bit later when you've already caused some damage. There are certain build orders or certain players that will get the oils nice and early, and then it will put you into like a kind of economic position, so it might allow you to build a second arms dealer a lot quicker. But your first few attacks are generally going to be slower, so you're going to have to be prepared for them to counter a big blob of these, which is going to be quite hard to do, usually. I always like to group my army on a number, so personally I use control groups 1 and 2 for even my 2 arms dealers, or I will use 1 for 1 arms dealer and 2 for my barracks, so I can do that. Always want to rally point them. So then when I upgrade to a second arms dealer, I will go control group 1, control group 2, but just by holding the control key and a number, and I'll have my 2 numbers like that. And let's say I want to be building quads, so I just tap 1, tap 2, build a quad for each. So yeah, my army I personally always have on 3. If I have a second army, I will have that on 4. So I've got 3 and 4. A player like Size will use numbers 1 and 2 for their army, and like 0 and 9 for their war factory and barracks or whatever. So yeah, your army you generally always want to have on a number. It just allows you to control it better. If you're not, if you don't have it selected, I can just tap the number 3 and instantly my army is selected. And the final point was, whilst you're doing all of this, you always want to have some units queued up. Generally, at least one always queued up from your first war factory. So let's say I only had one war factory, one arms dealer rather. I always really want to have this produced, and I always want to have it working for me. Just like I always want to have no idle workers, I always want to have a unit queued up. So in this case, I've got one quad queued up. The reason you don't want to queue up loads is because then all that money there is then stuck inside of the war factory and there's nothing you can do with it. But whereas if I just build one at a time, I've then always got that money in the bank to build. For example, if I need to drop down a command center or a palace or anything like that, and I don't have the money. If it's all trapped in the war factory, I don't have the money for it. But if it's only one unit at a time, any excess money that I have is going to be in the bank rather than elsewhere, yeah. So yeah, you always want to have at least one unit queued up. So I know this is still a bit basic, guys, but I really recommend you get all of the basics right. Master this build order. Master having no idle workers. Master always having a quad queued up. And also master with GLA getting some damage off nice and early, and then knowing when to get your oil behind it. It's all the basics of 0 Hour, and you can probably apply this to any army as well. There is one other little thing that you can do. Is you see we've got a garrison now. You see the field of view. So we can see the edge of the fog of war all the way over there. That's because the garrison and the RPG inside of it has a massive field of view. So for example, GLA cannot scout. It cannot. It can't use the radar that. The satellite scan that USA can. It also can't use the drone. But what it can do is scout using technical. So you can see at the moment with a technical, I can see this much into the where my mouse cursor is now, into the fog of war. If I unload an RPG, suddenly that field of view then increases by loads. Did you just see that? So I'm going to go inside it. The fog of war will slowly go back. Oops. So you see it's slowly gone back there. Unload an RPG. Oh wow, suddenly I can see all of this space. So a really good thing to do is to have an RPG inside of one of the garrisons, so you can see a huge view, and it's also a bit of a protection. But also on the edges of your base, you want to leave the occasional rebel or RPG, not a worker. It's rebels and RPGs that have the big vision for GLA, and you want to leave one of them sometimes on the edge of your base. So for example, where's a good example now? So for example here, I need to get a RPG. So get some RPGs inside of here. You see here at the moment, I don't have a very big vision, so a group of these or a group of tanks could arrive here without me seeing. If I put one RPG outside of there, suddenly I can see this massive, huge range, so I can see something coming a mile away. So let's say I put you in a room with a blindfold on against a guy with a sword, and I said, go and fight him. You're probably not going to be able to beat him with a blindfold on. You can't see, you can't fight what you can't see. But if you suddenly take that blindfold off and able to see what is coming at you, you've got a much better chance of being able to fight it. So for example, we'll put the RPG back inside of the tunnel. My range is going to go a lot less. So it's like maybe not fighting with a blindfold on, but you're fighting with blinkers on. You can only see up to here. Now, by the time a group of V's appears here, if you pop all of your stuff outside of your tunnel, chances are that's going to go very bad for you and you're going to lose your whole tunnel. But if you'd have left one RPG just either here or even a little bit further back, so it's like, if you want to protect it, that massive range is a massive advantage. So you generally always want to be leaving RPGs on all edges of your base. So for example here, massive increase. So you'll always see pro players leaving one RPG on the edges of their base, or a garrison at least anyway. So there wraps up part 2, guys. I know it's still very basic, as I said, but I really think you should get the fundamentals of GLA right before we move on to anything more advanced, which we will do into part 3. So GG, cheers for tuning in, guys, and I will see you in the next one.